all the way down south to Ocean Beach. I've been talking to people who've heard what they think is a sonic boom, one, maybe even two. This happening around 3:15 or 3:20 this afternoon. And a lot of people thought it was an earthquake, in fact, because it was a big, loud sound, they said, and then their walls shook and the floor shook. Which is a little bit weird if you don't think so as well. The sonic boom isn't usually one that you hear twice, and that so many people in so many areas all throughout San Diego heard it at the exact same time.
Update: a mysterious boom felt across the county. We got calls and messages from people who said they felt a huge shaking around mid-afternoon. There were no reports of earthquakes that would have caused that. We contacted the military, Naval Base Coronado, MCAS Miramar, and Camp Pendleton. They got back to us. None was conducting exercises that would explain it. You can let us know where you felt it and read the comments of others by going to our 10 News Facebook page. It's facebook.com/ABC.
Well, I personally didn't hear it, but thousands took to social media saying that they did, right here in Santee, but then also all over San Diego. I mean, we're talking about IB. They said, I automatically thought it was an earthquake in Coronado. They said that it sounded like two loud bangs. So like I said, we caught people here in Santee that heard it, El Cajon and Escondido. Take a listen.
It was about around 3:15, 3:20 when all of a sudden we kind of just heard this noise.
We were walking out to the car and man, we heard a boom.
And it sounded like either a boom or like a car had hit a building.
Two big bangs. I kept waiting for more, thinking maybe it was an earthquake.
The wall kind of bounced us off the wall and the floor shook.
It sounded like a cannon, or it didn't sound like a crash, but it sounded more like a boom.
I figured it out.
We were just perplexed.
Perplex is right for all of us. So, of course, we went out searching for answers for you tonight. We called USGS. They said that they do not have, they did not detect any kind of earthquake happening during that time. We reached out to the military, reached out to local law enforcement, and nothing out of the ordinary. So, at this point, none of us still really know. But again, two loud booms about 3:20 this afternoon, all the way from IB all the way up to Escondido.
A ball of fire lit up the night sky and caused a sonic boom heard in 3 counties overnight.
Yeah, this was a meteor crashing through the atmosphere. It was captured here on our home surveillance camera in Huntersville. Reporter Ken Lemon is live in Mount Holly tonight and spoke to an expert about the noise and what caused it. Ken?
Yeah, that expert told me that a rock about the size of this baseball from outer space caused the sound that frightened people in this area today. He said detecting that was an easy answer, but it doesn't explain the sonic booms heard around this town over the past couple of weeks. The blast was heard just after 4 this morning from Mount Holly to Indian Trail. This video from Huntersville explains what happened. It comes from a security camera at Rob Swanson's house.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you look at it and then you look at it like 6 more times. You're like, what did I see? Like, what is that?
We show the video to the director of the planetarium for the Shield Museum.
When I saw that video, I knew right away that that was a meteor. This couldn't have been anything else.
Jim Craig guesses the meteor was probably about the size of a baseball, and the loud boom happened as it broke into pieces. He says the Earth is hit with tons of small debris every day, but he doubts meteors cause the sonic booms reported in the Mount Holly area 2 other times over the past 2 weeks.
Because the odds of it happening in the same area repeatedly are really, really slim.
That worries Sarah Warwick.
Shouldn't we know when a meteor is coming?
She is puzzled but satisfied to know the likely cause of the sound that jarred her this morning. She's disappointed that there's no definite reason for the other 2 window-rattling blasts. Mount Holly 911 dispatch was flooded with calls after one of those sonic booms last week.
With not knowing what it is, it makes you uneasy.
People say they feel the need to protect themselves from whatever causes sound, but it's hard to do that when you don't know what caused the sound. Now, the expert said that a hunk of debris the size of a house passed between the Earth and the moon yesterday morning, but he says a hunk of debris the size of a house passed between the Earth and the moon yesterday morning, but he says he doesn't feel that had anything to do with the sounds that we heard here recently.
Well, the stormy pattern that we've been talking about for the West begins today. There's at least 4 storms coming into the West Coast from now. There's at least 4 storms coming into the West Coast from now, right in the next week. And each of these storms is going to have a lot of Pacific moisture with it. In fact, if you follow the stream flow in the atmosphere, what we call the jet stream, you can trace it all the way back to Asia. So there's going to be a tremendous amount, or what we call a river of moisture, coming into the West Coast. Localized flooding, heavy mountain snow. There's also going to be strong winds, and there will be the threat for mudslides and rock slides. But for Southern California, this is definitely going to be much wetter than what we had last week. Here's storm system number 1 already coming in. All right, you can clearly see this. You see this counterclockwise spin? That is our one storm system that is pushing to the north, and here comes our band of moisture, storm number 1. That's coming into the northwest as we head toward the afternoon. So rain will start in Seattle, then move down toward Portland, then move toward Medford. Now, once you get east of the Cascades, it's cold, that we're going to have some ice and snow that in time will be changing over to rain as we head into the latter half of tonight and into Wednesday. Major travel delays, snow levels are going to rise, and look out, we're going to have some ice through the passes, even through the Columbia Gorge. That's I-84, also I-90 through Snoqualmie Pass. You're going to have some ice with this storm as we go through today. Then, slowly but surely, we're going to start pushing the rain and mountain snow south. We'll start getting into the San Francisco area by Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night, then Thursday into Southern California, and in time, this rain and mountain snow will spread all the way in to the Four Corners area.
All this rain that we've had in California, a lot of people probably wondering, is this helping the drought at all? Because we've actually had a drought going on in California for like the last 10 years. Of course, it's been really bad over the last couple of years particularly. Short answer is yes, it has helped the drought, actually a lot. You look at just the comparison between now and a year ago, okay? So this was a year ago, this is now, and this is the latest drought monitor that just came out. 100% of the state of California had a drought going last year, all right? And you see this darkest color here, that's the exceptional drought, where we had actually a lot of the state under exceptional drought a year ago, 43%. Now we only have 2% of the state under an exceptional drought. And I think the most amazing thing to see from this latest update of the drought monitor is all of Northern California, no more drought. All right, so yeah, I know we've dealt with a lot of flooding, but you know, it's had some good effects as well. Look at this seal, or is it a sea lion? I don't really know. I'm not a biologist, but that thing is enjoying the snow, that's for sure. That was in Portland, Oregon, not long ago, a couple of days ago. That was Winter Storm Jupiter, and guess what? We've got another named winter storm on the board right now already, and it's going to affect Portland pretty heavily. This one's called Winter Storm Corey, and if you think about Portland right now, you guys have a pretty decent amount of snow on the ground. This storm is going to bring a pretty significant amount of ice. We've actually got an ice storm warning that is out for Portland along with other areas up in the Pacific Northwest. The worst of it will be I-84 east of Portland through today and Wednesday. Could see up to a ½ inch of ice. I think that's probably about the most that we'll get out of this, but that is a very significant amount of ice. And then after that, the second part of this storm later on in the week is going to drop rain. So rain on top of freezing rain on top of snow. Yes, you think it kind of melts all that stuff, but the problem is it causes flooding. So not only do we have that flooding issue, we've got the flooding issue that's likely to occur down in parts of California, at least from all the rain that's going to come in from the storm. But once again, look at all the colors on this map. This is going to be much like the last couple of storms. A lot of snow in the high terrain up in the Sierra. You're going to get a lot of rain down in the Central Valley. And yes, it causes flooding in the short term. It causes slippery roads and all that stuff. But keep in mind, not long ago, a lot of farmland in California looked like this. We are absolutely hacking away at this drought right now. This is good in the long run.
What's being referred to as a once-in-a-decade storm is causing flood warnings, mudslides, wreaking havoc, to say the very least. We know at least 4 people have died in California as a result of these storms. Storms coming one after another, and we're told they may not let up until later this week. More than 1,000 homes, some 1,300 in Reno, Nevada, have been evacuated due to flooding threats. According to officials, Interstate 80 in Reno also closed because of a large mudslide. The mud and rock covering a huge section of that road. In some places, the mud as deep as 7 feet.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. Wow. So because of the rain, half my yard is in the street. Check that out, Mrs. Lopez. There's the police officers. I got choppers in the sky. This is, my playhouse didn't come down. This is unbelievable. No bocce for a while.
No showers for a while.
No showers for a while.
After Public City Works worked all night to try to get the debris out of the street. It was literally covering this whole block. And my guys right here are moving the debris completely out of here. ¿Todo está bien? ¿Qué tenemos? Árboles, concreto. Tierra, concreto. We've got a lot of trees, a lot of concrete, and dirt. ¿Y qué más? Drain. Oh, see, drain. So they got to get it all out of here. Thank God my kids weren't playing in the yard and that no one got hurt. Here. Thank God my kids weren't playing in the yard.
That is going to be the case in California. Mudslides, a huge concern. Rocks and dirt crushed this news van just south of San Jose. The mudslide covered northbound lanes as the morning commute was about to start. The Highway Patrol warns that drivers, this is what could happen to anybody, really.
A giant sequoia that has stood for centuries has fallen. Tough not to remember this picture. You don't have to have visited the so-called tunnel tree to know of it. Officials say all of the rain may be the cause. Look at that. It was known as the pioneer cabin tree or the tunnel tree. Reportedly, it was hollowed out in the 1880s, so tourists...
Where evacuations are underway. Juliet?
Liz, hundreds of people had to evacuate. I had to tell you, it was dry this afternoon, so it gave people kind of a sense of relief. But the rain has kicked in. This neighborhood behind me, well, you can't really even go into it because of the feet of water right now. This RV camp that is usually along the Russian River is now in it. The people living here had to clear out, making sure everyone is safe. To give you a little perspective and a lay of the land, this is someone's backyard. You can see their car is almost submerged right now. And then there are sights like this, a Guerneville resident walking his pig down by the river, a pig with a GoPro. Pig's eye view?
Pig's eye view. Her name's Olive Cobblepot, and she's just looking out for all the other animals. She's going to report back and show, how they see the river.
Have you ever seen that before, a pig with a GoPro? All right, so how are people in Guerneville dealing with this? Well, right over my shoulder, my photographer, John Ramos, is going to show you. These two women are actually having to walk to their house after the grocery store, and this is their walk to their front door.
Crews dismantled this tree that squashed 2 cars in the Sunnyvale neighborhood around 9 this morning.
I was like...
Juan Gutierrez says his uncle's car is totaled.
It just started squeaking and crunching. And then it just slowly fell down, and as soon as it hit the cars, the tire air just...
Turns out it ruptured a gas main.
We started hearing a really loud sound from the gas escaping from the floor. And then we started getting everyone out.
Officials say the tree that fell was a 70-year-old Monterey pine, roughly 70 feet tall. Because of years of drought, the roots had become so brittle that it simply toppled during this storm, leaving destruction in its path.
Superstorm Sandy 4 years ago. TV 1055 Long Island Bureau Chief Richard Rose reports from Long Beach.
One after another, wind-whipped waves crashed ashore off Long Beach, a powerful sign of what's to come overnight. Serious flooding is expected to reach the many homes that hug the coast. City workers have hurriedly built existing dunes higher while clearing sewers and storm drains of any debris, and they're relying on the new boardwalk to withstand this storm.
It's a dramatically different structure than it was before. We've got bulkheading driven 20 feet into the ground in front of it to protect it. We've got a concrete substructure, hurricane straps, and floatable, sustainable hardwood.
The city manager says he doesn't expect the kind of damage seen with Superstorm Sandy and believes the worst flooding will actually occur on the north side of Long Beach Bayside in Reynolds Channel.
We lost everything completely, and we were displaced for about 8 months.
Left homeless by Superstorm Sandy, Julia Lopez Motherway says she and her family decided not to rebuild their Long Beach home and instead moved into a condo in one of the high rises lining the shore.
We do feel a lot safer. When it's times like this, I don't have to worry about flooding and the emotional trauma that comes back and the memories. We know we're safe in a building.
While most residents sought warmth and dry shelter, professional runner Anthony Randolphi proved there is nothing that will deter him.
I run every day. Just like even during Hurricane Sandy, I ran 12 miles that day. So, and it's 136 days straight running today. So I wasn't going to stop.
Meanwhile, power crews are at the ready and already busy clearing trees knocked onto power lines by these fierce winds. In Nassau County, Richard Rose, TV 1055.
And city managers are directing residents to the city's website for emergency contact information.
To the Jersey Shore, one of the areas taking the worst hit in all of this is Wildwood. Eyewitness News reporter Greg Argos is live there with more on conditions. Greg.
And Jessica, you can tell it is very windy right here. We are here in Wildwood, like you mentioned. This is the Wildwood Boardwalk. Normally, even during the winter months, you'll notice a person or two taking a jog or a walk. We have not seen a single person out on this boardwalk all afternoon, and that is because this heavy rain, this heavy wind, really keeping everyone indoors.
Right now we've got a major northeaster.
And with the wind, rain, and minor flooding slamming beach towns down the shore, emergency response officials are closely monitoring what this wicked weather is doing.
It is a dangerous storm because of the high winds.
Marty Palugi is the director of emergency management for Cape May County, and he says his biggest concern for this weather system is the wind.
Looking at keeping an eye on the power outages. This time of the year it's dangerous for any kind of prolonged power outages. We may have to open up shelters.
As for those living in Avalon, Stone Harbor, or Wildwood full-time, Palugi isn't too worried.
The people on the barrier islands this time of the year are year-round residents, majority of them, and they know what to do.
In fact, most roads were clear, most neighborhoods quiet, a few people running errands.
I'm used to it now.
Like Dave Duncan swinging by the post office.
Most people know where the floods are at.
Rick Grillo, a carpenter, has the day off.
Usually we'll have some inside work, but we're actually starting a new house, building it from the ground up, so we're outside right now, so we kind of lost a day and lost a day's pay.
He says he's used to these winter storms. Even so, he's hoping for just one thing.
Just pray it doesn't flood.
So he's concerned, of course, about the flooding, but you heard the main concern is the wind and the possible power outages. At last check, the electric company which services this entire region only saying 5 homes without power, and there's already a crew right there servicing that. Great news tonight, though, of course, these winds could really change things at any second. Now, coming up tonight at 6, you'll hear from some folks who had to work during this winter wicked weather and what they're doing to sort of prepare for all of it. That's coming up in just about 1 hour. For now, though, we're live here in Wildwood. I'm Greg Argos, CBS 3 Eyewitness News.
Greg, we'll see you then.
Wind gusts are still very much a problem here at the Jersey Shore tonight, but the bigger concern overnight into tomorrow will be flooding, especially with high tide approaching. High winds whipped up sand and salt water while battering beach fences in Bayhead, New Jersey Monday night, and traffic lights swayed above the few who dared to drive in this mess.
I got a lot of experience driving at nighttime, and right now it's about as bad as it gets.
In nearby Point Pleasant, the cold, biting rain pelted people running through the parking lots.
A little rain you can deal with, but the wind is just crazy. It's hollering at my house.
It's just nasty.
They were outside against the advice of emergency responders. What's the worst part of this storm tonight?
The wind.
You won't find anyone at this condo complex in Long Branch who disagrees. The relentless wind left part of the roof dangling off the side of the building. Then another piece crashed, wreaking havoc on cars below.
I ran outside to move my car, but my back windshield was already smashed in.
A threat that lasted throughout the day, as CBS 2's Meg Baker found out at noon. Here comes the roof, just came down. The roof just came down. Now the big concern is coastal flooding. We saw emergency crews out in force, setting up cones to close off residential streets already underwater. Dangerous conditions due to this January nor'easter that's not done yet. At this hour, nearly 4,000 customers across New Jersey are still without power. Again, emergency responders asking very sincerely tonight for as many people to stay off the roads as possible. Let them receive injuries. One was a student who lost 3 fingers when a door slammed shut on her hand. Now, most of the buildings at the private Christian school were damaged, some pretty extensively, as you can see by these pictures, and students have had to pack up their things and relocate until those buildings can be inspected for safety. And you've just seen the images: cars overturned, roofs ripped up, trees snapped, power lines down. So you can see why safety is the university's top priority. One thing that did survive, however, was a statue of Christ, and many students are now looking at that as a symbol of hope on the road to recovery.
A Christian university in Mississippi was also hit hard by those devastating tornadoes. William Carey University in Hattiesburg suffered extensive damage, but thankfully no one was killed. A school spokesperson says nearly all of the 30 buildings on campus were damaged and about 100 vehicles were totaled. But the university president says something remarkable happened at the chapel.
We had extensive damage to our beautiful Bass Chapel on campus, but the Bible on the pulpit is left undisturbed, and it's open to Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength in times of trouble.
The Word of God stands. William Carey University is accepting cash donations.
earthquakes. The epicenter was in the area in central Italy, about 100 miles north of Rome, where we saw such devastation in October and in August. But we hadn't felt sort of the tremors that we felt in Rome in those earthquakes to the same extent. You know, buildings, my building certainly shaking, schools evacuated, the subway system evacuated. I'm on a street right now where there are people standing outside the building that have been evacuated, very nervous, making calls, seeing if their kids are okay, seeing if other people are okay. There hasn't been damage reported in Rome, and we are obviously in a seismic zone, but you just don't feel this sort of tremors in the capital city like this, so people are extremely nervous. And when you've had a series like this, 4 each about 20 minutes apart, where buildings are shaking, you've got a sense of panic. Several hundred calls to the authorities. I'm walking down the street. There's a school that's being evacuated right now because of the tremors. But you've got several hundred calls to the authorities. Checking buildings, cracks in buildings, things like that were reported in October when there was a very strong earthquake about 100 miles north of Rome. There was some damage to buildings in Rome. Not anything significant, but there were cracks in buildings. Obviously, those are the areas that they're going to be looking at first to see if there's any further damage, and just wait and see if the Earth's going to stop shaking, or if are we in for a full day of this sort of seismic activity.
Central Italy has been hit by a series of earthquakes exacerbated by an ongoing cold snap. Amatrice, destroyed in a fatal earthquake that left around 300 dead in August, was once again shaken to the core. Residents have taken to the streets to call for central government help to accelerate the reconstruction process. The latest tremors hit 3 neighbouring regions, Abruzzo, Lazio and Marche. Schools have been closed and the Rome Underground shut as a safety precaution. The area north of the capital has suffered a number of earthquakes in recent times, and seismologists believe a further disaster could soon strike the region. Scientists have long known that central Italy is vulnerable to tremors because the region is being stretched in a northeast-southwest direction at a rate estimated at 3 millimeters per year. This is due to the separation of subterranean tectonic plates on which Italy sits.
2 breaking stories this morning. Rescue efforts are underway in central Italy, where an avalanche buried a small hotel. A member of the rescue squad told Reuters there were many dead. The avalanche hit last night following a series of 4 strong earthquakes. It's believed there were about 30 people in the 3-story hotel when the avalanche hit. All are missing. Rescue efforts are hampered by the weather. The hotel is located in an area that was hit by deadly quakes last year.
Up to 25 people are missing, feared dead after an avalanche hit a 4-story hotel in the Abruzzo region of central Italy. Several children are believed to be among those inside. 4 people have been confirmed dead. 2 were recovered from under the snow in Farindola, the village nearest to the Hotel Rigopiano, which lies at the foot of the Gran Sasso mountain. At least 2 people were found alive and are being treated for hypothermia. A wall of snow and debris hit the 4-star hotel and spa on Wednesday evening, a matter of hours after 4 strong earthquakes struck central Italy. The wintry conditions have hampered recovery operations. The new president of the European Parliament said people are terrified. These are very bad weather conditions. So I think that on behalf of the Parliament, we can send a message of solidarity to those European citizens who are going through these tough times. Firefighters, mountain rescue teams and local police are coordinating the operation. The force of the avalanche is said to have pushed the hotel some 10 meters away from its usual site. Emergency service workers were eventually able to enter the hotel through a window. One of those rescued said his wife and children were trapped inside.
The board takes the unprecedented step, the first time in its history, of moving the clock hand 30 seconds closer to
show we may be closer to the end of the world. It largely factors in nuclear weapons. Last night, President Trump said having the nuclear codes is sobering and scary, but he is confident he will make the right decisions. The clock had been set at 3 minutes to midnight. The 12 o'clock hour represents the destruction of human civilization.
The doomsday clock moved forward 30 seconds and now stands at 2.5 minutes before midnight. That's the closest to midnight, or the end of the world, as it's been in 60.
Come up with another word besides doomsday. Let's start with that. I know, it sounds like you gotta be very ominous. Yeah. Very ominous.
I know lots of people who worry about some nuclear accident more than they worry about anything.
For the first time since 1953, following hydrogen bomb tests in the U.S. and then Soviet Union, a panel of scientists and scholars have warned that we are creeping close to a potential...
Word advanced the time out of a growing concern about the deterioration in relations between the United States and Russia.
Cited U.S. President Donald Trump's disturbing comments about the use of nuclear weapons, denials on the reality of climate change, and the global rise of nationalism as just some of the contributing factors in this dark forecast of the future.
Nuclear rhetoric is now loose and destabilizing. During the election campaign, and as President Trump engaged in casual talk about nuclear weapons, suggesting South Korea and Japan might acquire, their own nuclear weapons to compete with North Korea.
The doomsday clock is closer to midnight than it's ever been in the lifetime of almost everyone in this room.
Minute closer to midnight. It is now 2.5 minutes to midnight. The first has been the cavalier and reckless language used across the globe, especially in the United States during the presidential election and after, around nuclear weapons and nuclear threats. And the second is a growing disregard of scientific expertise that is needed when it comes to responding to pressing global challenges, including climate change. The board concludes in no uncertain terms that words matter in ensuring the safety and security of our planet. They are not the same as actions, but they matter a lot, especially when the risks of accident and miscalculation are so high. They have the ability to be walked back, but so too, as we have seen, influential actors alter their behavior in response to loose talk.
For the first time since 1953, following hydrogen bomb tests in the U.S. and then Soviet Union, a panel of scientists and scholars have warned that we are creeping close to a potential global apocalypse. The Chicago-based Bulletin of Atomic Scientists have moved the doomsday clock, a symbolic countdown to the end of the world, to 2.5 minutes to midnight. The group cited U.S. President Donald Trump's disturbing comments about the use of nuclear weapons, denials on the reality of climate change, and the global rise of nationalism as just some of the contributing factors in this dark forecast of the future. The emblematic clock had remained at 3 minutes to midnight for the past 2 years. Since 1945, a team of Nobel laureates at the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists has been compiling research and global data to set the doomsday clock.
Advance the time out of a growing concern about the deterioration in relations between the United States and Russia, two countries that account for more than 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. It did so also for unchecked nuclear modernization programs in every nuclear state, and a lack of global action in response to climate change.
Nuclear rhetoric is now loose and destabilizing. During the election campaign, and as President Trump engaged in casual talk about nuclear weapons, suggesting South Korea and Japan might acquire their own nuclear weapons to compete with North Korea, we are more than ever impressed, as Rachel has just told you, that words matter, words count. The Iran nuclear deal has been successful in accomplishing its goals during its first year, but its future is in doubt under the new administration.
The board takes the unprecedented step, the first time in its history, of moving the clock hand 30 seconds closer to midnight.
Top scientists updated the doomsday clock to show we may be closer to the end of the world. It largely factors in nuclear weapons. Last night, President Trump said having the nuclear codes is sobering and scary, but he is confident he will make the right decisions. The clock had been set at 3 minutes to midnight. The 12 o'clock hour represents the destruction of human civilization. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist magazine first set the clock 70 years ago. It's been adjusted 21 times since. Chris Van Cleve is at the National Press Club in Washington, where this year's clock was just unveiled. Chris, good morning.
Good morning. Just moments ago, that doomsday clock moved forward 30 seconds and now stands at 2.5 minutes before midnight. That's the closest to midnight, or the end of the world, as it's been in 64 years, showing that this panel has real concerns about what the future may hold. We're talking about a metaphor. We're not literally minutes from the end of the world.
Well, it is a metaphor, but we are literally minutes away from a nuclear exchange should someone press a button.
The doomsday clock ticked 30 seconds closer to midnight, in part, the experts say, because it's President Donald Trump's finger on the button. Prior to taking office, he called for the U.S. to strengthen and expand its nuclear capability. Does the election of a new president who might be more hawkish, is that grounds for moving the clock?
Those are the issues that the Science and Security Board take into consideration. We very rarely make a decision based on an individual.
The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists debuted the clock in 1947, setting the initial time at 7 minutes to midnight because, according to the artist who designed it, quote, "it looked good to my eye." The hands came the closest to midnight, 2 minutes away, in 1953, after the U.S. and the Soviet Union tested their first hydrogen bombs.
This seems to me to be more a day for a searching of the human soul, perhaps, than for any kind of scientific celebration.
We were the furthest from annihilation in 1991.
Moving the clock.
With 17 minutes to spare, after the signing of the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty at the end of the Cold War. But they acknowledge they once got it wrong. The year of the Cuban Missile Crisis, which brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, the clock moved back to 12 minutes to midnight.
That's the one that when we look back across our whole time series is the one that we'd say they didn't know all the information at that point.
If that clock ticks closer to midnight, are you going to lose any sleep?
No, I'm not going to lose any sleep. I don't think we're near an apocalypse.
Bill Gertz writes about national security for the Washington Times and is publishing a new book which details the continuing threat of nuclear weapons. He sees the doomsday clock as more of a political barometer.
In a lot of ways, the doomsday clock is being used by the liberal left to try to promote its agenda for nuclear disarmament, for greater efforts to control climate change and other elements.
We've moved it for Republicans and Democrats, and most recently under a Democratic administration.
There are some that are going to say all you're doing is creating panic at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty.
Our goal isn't to create panic, but it is to say this is very serious and there's things that we can do. And if we can have that conversation, that would be very productive.
Saying words matter, the panel expressed real concern over comments President Trump has made about nuclear weapons and climate change, but also about developments in China, Russia, North Korea, India, and Pakistan, as well as for the first time talking seriously about cyber threats, including cyber terrorism and hacking as a way to undermine democracy.
Chris, thanks.
Could they come up with another word besides doomsday?